horrible casts of the twitch faces looked, when my eyes strayed up to them, as if they had come to a crisis in their suspended attention and were going to sneeze. "Come," said Mr. Jaggers, warming the backs of his legs with the backs of his warmed hands. "I'll be plain with you, my friend Pip. That's a question I must not be asked. You'll understand that better when I tell you it's a question that might compromise me. Come, I'll go a little further with you. I'll say something more." He bent down so low to frown at his boots that he was able to rub the calves of his legs in the pause he made. "When that person discloses," said Mr. Jaggers, straightening himself, "you and that person will settle your own affairs. When that person discloses, my part in this business will cease and determine. When that person discloses, it will not be necessary for me to know anything about it. And that's all I have got to say." We looked at one another until I withdrew my eyes and looked thoughtfully at the floor. From this last speech I derived the notion that Miss Havisham, for some reason or no reason, had not taken him into her confidence as to her designing me for Estella, that he resented this and felt a jealousy about it, or that he really did object to that scheme and would have nothing to do with it. When I raised my eyes again, I found that he had been shrewdly looking at me all the time, and was doing so still. "If that is all you have to say, sir," I remarked, "there can be nothing left for me to say." He nodded assent, and pulled out his thief-dreaded watch, and asked me where I was going to dine. I replied at my own chambers with Herbert. As a necessary sequence, I asked him if he would favour us with his company, and he promptly accepted the invitation. But he insisted on walking home with me, in order that I might make no extra preparation for him, and first he had a letter or two to write, and, of course, had his hands to wash. So I said I would go into the outer office and talk to Wemmick. The fact was, that when the £500 had come into my pocket, a thought had come into my head which had been often there before, and it appeared to me that Wemmick was a good person to advise with concerning such thought. He had already locked up his safe, and made preparations for going home. He had left his desk, brought out his 2 greasy office candlesticks, and stood them in line with the snuffers on a slab near the door, ready to be extinguished. He had raked his fire low, put his hat and greatcoat ready, and was beating himself all over the chest with his safe-key as an athletic exercise after business. "Mr. Wemmick," said I want to ask your opinion. I am very desirous to serve a friend." Wemmick tightened his post-office and shook his head, as if his opinion were dead against any fatal weakness of that sort. "This friend," I pursued, "is trying to get on in commercial life, but has no money, and finds it difficult and disheartening to make a beginning. Now I want somehow to help him to a beginning." "With money down?" said Wemmick, in a tone drier than any sawdust. "With some money down," I replied, for an uneasy remembrance shot across me of that symmetrical bundle of papers at home. "With some money down, and perhaps some anticipation of my expectations." "Mr. Pip," said Wemmick, "I should like just to run over with you on my fingers, if you please, the name of the various bridges up as high as Chelsea Reach. Let's see. There's London, 1. Southwark, 2. Blackfriars, 3. Waterloo, 4. Westminster, 5. Vauxhall, 6. He had checked off each bridge in its turn with the handle of his safe-key on the palm of his hand. "There's as many as 6, you see, to choose from." "I don't understand you," said I. "Choose your bridge, Mr. Pip," returned Wemmick, "and take a walk upon your bridge, and pitch your money into the Thames over the centre arch of your bridge, and you know the end of it. Serve a friend with it, and you may know the end of it too, but it's a less pleasant and profitable end." I could have posted a newspaper in his mouth, he made it so wide after saying this. "This is very discouraging," said I. "Meant to be so," said Wemmick. "Then it is your opinion," I inquired with some little indignation, "that a man should never—" "Invest portable property in a friend?" said Wemmick. "Certainly he should not, unless he wants to get rid of the friend, and then it becomes a question how much portable property it may be worth to get rid of him." "And that," said I, "is your deliberate opinion, Mr. Wemmick?" "That," he returned, "is my deliberate opinion in this office." "Ah!" said I, pressing him, for I thought I saw him near a loophole here. "But how would that be your opinion at Walworth?" "Mr. Pip," he replied, with gravity, "Walworth is one place, and this office is another. Much as the Aged is one person, and Mr. Jaggers is another. They must not be confounded together. My Walworth sentiments must be taken at Walworth. None but my official sentiments can be taken in this office." "Very well," said I, much relieved. "Then I shall look you up at Walworth, you may depend upon it." "Mr. Pip," he returned, "you will be welcome there, in a private and personal capacity." We had held this conversation in a low voice, well knowing my guardian's ears to be the sharpest of the sharp. As he now appeared in his doorway, towelling his hands, Wemmick got on his greatcoat and stood by to snuff out the candles. We all three went into the street together, and from the doorstep Wemmick turned his way, and Mr. Jaggers and I turned ours. I could not help wishing more than once that evening that Mr. Jaggers had an Aged in Gerrard Street, or a Stinger, or a something, or a somebody, to unbend his brows a little. It was an uncomfortable consideration on a 21st birthday that coming of age at all seemed hardly worth while in such a guarded and suspicious world as he made of it. He was 1,000 times better informed and cleverer than Wemmick, and yet I would 1,000 times rather have had Wemmick to dinner. And Mr. Jaggers made not me alone intensely melancholy, because, after he was gone, Herbert said of himself, with his eyes fixed on the fire, that he thought he must have committed a felony and forgotten the details of it, he felt so dejected and guilty. End of chapter.